I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, religious persecution. The Ortega regime targets another group of Catholics. We have the latest. Race for the White House. A preview of the first GOP debate with one key player missing. Holding history. An update from the Museum of the Bible on a rare and valuable part of its collection. And a gathering in Germany. A closer look at a meeting regarding the life and work of Pope Benedict XVI. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of the Queenship of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Our top story tonight, a community of Jesuit priests in Nicaragua have been expelled from their housing. This is the latest move by the Ortega regime targeting the faithful. It comes just days after the government took over a nearby Catholic university amid allegations that it was housing terrorists. Church officials strongly deny the claims. The evicted priests are reported to be safe and still in the country's capital city. Well, the Archdiocese of San Francisco has filed for bankruptcy, saying that it is necessary to manage more than the 500 lawsuits alleging clergy sexual abuse. In a statement, Archbishop Salvador Cordileone said the filing will stop all legal actions against the Archdiocese and that will help it develop a settlement plan with survivors. The overwhelming majority of the cases stem from allegations involving priests who are no longer in active ministry. Meantime, the countdown is on as 8 Republicans have qualified for the party's first 2024 presidential primary debate. Here are the 8 participants right there on your screen. The list includes Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and former Vice President Mike Pence. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with a preview of what we can expect. Eric.
Well, there's one big person minus from that list is the clear frontrunner in the national and early state polls. That's former President Donald Trump. He said that he would skip the debate in Milwaukee, and he called on his rivals to drop out. Now, his opponents spent the day telling Americans it's an opportunity for them to shine.
I have no issue with him skipping the first couple of debates. The truth is, many people in this country didn't even know who I was 6 months ago. So this is a good opportunity for me to introduce myself to the country.
Other candidates spoke of their debate strategy.
I'll listen to the questions, answer them directly and honestly. And if someone up there says something that I believe is dishonest, to call them out on it. That's it. I don't have any more complicated strategy than that.
And one is already talking about going head-to-head with President Joe Biden in 2024.
We are going to hold him accountable for his failures. We're going to show the American people that there's a better way.
The debate comes as a new Iowa poll shows former President Donald Trump with a commanding lead in the critical early nominating state. 42% of likely Republican caucus goers say Trump is their first choice, more than doubling the support of his nearest rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Several issues will be front and center, like the economy, the border, and abortion. Members of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America are making the trek to Wisconsin and say the pro-life message must be addressed.
And we're really hoping that the moderators will ask the GOP candidates, will you support pro-life protections through national limits on abortion? And how do you plan to serve mothers who are faced with unplanned pregnancies? Those 2 questions are so crucial.
Now, I did find out that the Democratic National Committee does plan to troll the debate in Milwaukee by flying a plane, pulling a banner that reads, quote, GOP 2024, a race for the extreme MAGA base. Let the games begin. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the state of Indiana is set to enact a near total ban on abortion. This after the state Supreme Court decided against reconsidering a motion brought by the ACLU. The justices said the lawsuit did not have a reasonable chance of success. The abortion ban will take effect in the coming days. While the Biden administration continues slamming states that have enacted pro-life laws, this time connecting abortion bans to higher maternal mortality rates. But pro-life organizations offer a different response. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, as President Joe Biden continues his vacation in Nevada tonight, his administration is not taking any breaks from demanding abortion access. And one social media post caught our attention.
Vice President Kamala Harris writes on Twitter, "Let's be clear. The same extremist so-called leaders who are pushing abortion bans have been silent on the issue of maternal mortality." And she adds this graphic in large letters. The top 10 states with the highest rates of maternal mortality are the same states that have banned abortion. The hypocrisy. But Tara Sander Lee with the pro-life group Charlotte Lozier Institute tells us,
Vice President Harris is just not making an accurate or scientifically accurate statement. We know that the risk of a mother dying from an abortion is actually greater than that from childbirth.
As for the Biden administration's constant attacks on pro-life laws,
it's a human rights issue. They are attacking the right that both of these patients have for life, the unborn child and the mother.
And Students for Life adds, essentially, Harris argues that if pro-life states allowed parents to kill more kids in the womb, there would be fewer mothers struggling after birth, which is not what other evidence shows at all. She ignores the trauma of the violence of abortion on mothers. Meanwhile, it's called the SAVE Plan, which stands for Saving on a Valuable Education. The Biden administration describes it as the most affordable student loan repayment plan ever to lower monthly payments for millions of borrowers.
That's going to save the typical borrower around $1,000 a year. It's going to give borrowers a little bit more breathing room.
But it comes at a cost. Penn Wharton saying, quote, "We estimate SAVE will incur a net cost of $475 billion over the 10-year budget window," end quote. Opponents call it unfair to taxpayers, making them foot someone else's bill. And in Hawaii, Maui authorities say more than 800 people remain unaccounted for. Just yesterday, President Biden saw the wildfire devastation up close, and in a speech saying the country grieves and stands with the community.
Also tonight, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirms that President Biden will be attending the G20 summit in India next month, Ukraine among the many issues to be discussed there. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Japan's prime minister is expressing concern over a plan from North Korea to launch a spy satellite.
衛星打ち上げを目的としたものであったとしても
The prime minister calling the decision a serious matter of national concern. Tokyo also says the plan would violate United Nations rules. Pyongyang says that it will launch the satellite in the coming days. A first attempt failed 3 months ago. Officials in Iran have unveiled a new military drone. They say the aircraft has the potential to reach Israel. Tehran says the aircraft can stay in the air for 24 hours. They also claim the drone is able to fly up to 24,000 feet with a speed of 130 miles per hour. The drone resembles one used by the U.S. military. Officials in Israel did not immediately respond. Well, Ukraine says it has carried out a drone attack on a Russian air base. It also says the 2 bombers and other aircraft were destroyed, while Russia claims that only 1 aircraft was damaged. This comes as Ukraine mounts the pressure of its counteroffensive on Russia. While the U.S. Embassy in Minsk is urging Americans not to travel to Belarus for any reason, and for those in the country to leave immediately due to what it calls a spillover risk from the war in Ukraine and the buildup of Russian military forces in Belarus. This as Poland's President Andrzej Duda confirmed yesterday that Russia started moving short-range nuclear weapons into Belarus, a move anticipated to change the security structure of the region and NATO's military alliance. And joining us now in the studio to talk about this and more is John Elliott, managing partner of the Brighton Strategy Group and former National Security Council spokesman for the Trump administration. John, always good to be with you. First off, let's talk about what's happening in Belarus right now. Obviously, a very concerning time, especially with Russia moving nuclear weapons into the country. That said, what do you think the strategy is here? And do you think Russia actually intends to use the weapons, or is it more posturing on their part?
Well, it's not necessarily posturing, Tracy. First of all, it's great to join you as always, but this isn't posturing as much as it is getting ready to have a credible threat to use tactical nuclear weapons. And obviously that's just crossing a Rubicon in a big way if Putin were ever to go there. But what they have to do is they have to position and be ready to have a credible threat that could maybe force Kiev to come to the negotiating table with Zelensky. Because if you take a step back, what's happening in Ukraine right now is that the vaunted spring, now it's a summer offensive, is not going well for the Ukrainians against the Russians. There's a front of about 930 miles, and after about 6 weeks now, the Ukrainian forces have only been able to take back about 98 square miles. And there's a lot of minefields and whatnot that they're having real trouble moving through. So what's going to happen is that there's a lot of pressure to actually get Kiev, get the Ukrainians to come to the negotiating table. And that's what President Trump has talked about and will definitely come up at the debate tonight, which is how to go forward on Ukraine in terms of the U.S. not failing to push the two sides together. And so that's a big question. And what you're seeing in Belarus right now is essentially Russian forces, including the Wagner Group, who are some really bad actors that have gone over into there. There's a risk to U.S. citizens that they don't want to have any U.S. citizens either hurt or targeted in some way. So it's best to get them all out of there, which is something that we did with our embassy a short while ago as well.
Yeah, and John, as you know, the United States has authorized Netherlands and Denmark to send American F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. It was a plan that was in the works for a while, I understand, but now it's taking effect. How does this change the game in the war in Ukraine, and do you think it will have an impact?
Well, the allies, so it's actually Netherlands and Denmark that are both going to send about 42 right now, up to 42. They didn't actually, the Dutch and the Danes did not specify the actual number, but Zelensky said it's 42. But no matter how many it is, it's not going to be a game changer for this reason, Tracy. It is going to take at least 4, probably 6, maybe even 8 months to actually have those fielded, because you have to have training for the pilots who are not used to flying F-16s, and you actually have to have them be able to be capable there. So it's not like you can turn a switch and suddenly have that be a decisive outcome on the battlefield or a game changer on the battlefield. So what a lot of people are saying, because there's momentum, even the Pope, and we could talk about that, has failed to accept the Kiev version of what their terms for peace are, but instead wants to have the sides come together, because the Pope Francis wants definitely to have peace as soon as possible there. What you're seeing is that that's going to probably happen because so many actors in the international community, including the U.S., including the U.S. by all counts, is going to have to push people to the table because of political pressure. And so you won't even see those F-16s mobilized on the battlefield if they're able to push the two sides together to get a peaceful settlement in the next, say, 6-8 months, and then they won't even be fielded by then.
John, we have about a minute left, and I want to talk about, you mentioned the Holy Father, and yesterday he had a meeting with Catholic U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley. Neither the Vatican nor the U.S. Defense Department provided really information regarding this private audience, but we do know there is a peace mission on behalf of the Vatican to help bring an end to the war in Ukraine. That said, what do you think that meeting signals, and also how significant is it?
Well, it's significant, first of all, on a personal level for General Milley. He's Catholic, and he really reveres the Pope, and this is a chance for him to be able to meet with him. But on Ukraine, that's one area where General Milley, about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, actually said that this is somewhat of a stalemate and that we should be open to a political solution. And that's different from the policy in the Biden administration, but that's a lot closer to where the Pope is by wanting to push the two sides together. So that could have been a meeting of the minds. They're keeping it, as they always do with Pope Francis and other popes. They keep these as private meetings, and they don't give a readout, but certainly they have a lot of common ground when it comes to Ukraine, and so it would have been a very interesting meeting, to say the least.
Yeah, and John, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. So much more we could talk about, but always great to have you on and get your insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tracy. Good to be on.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including rewriting the Bible. Republican lawmaker sounds the alarm over a proposal from China's government, and a real page-turner, an update from the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Republican member of Congress is the latest person to warn about changes being made to the Bible by China's communist government. In a speech to religious leaders over the weekend, Representative Mike Gallagher says China is changing the 10 Commandments. The first commandment is now a warning against the infiltration of Western ideology. The Wisconsin Republican says China's leaders have no problem with the first commandment as long as the CCP plays the role of God. And here in the nation's capital, there are a couple of chances to see at least parts of an original Gutenberg Bible. The Library of Congress has a complete copy printed entirely in vellum, a type of parchment. It is one of only 3 known vellum-printed copies in the world. The Museum of the Bible also has parts of a Gutenberg Bible, including a complete letter of Paul to the Romans. The Gutenberg Bible dates back from the 1400s. There are believed to be only 21 complete copies in the world. And we go now to Brian Hyland, curator of medieval manuscripts at the Museum of the Bible. Brian, great to be with you today. Talk to us more about the Gutenberg Bible, its importance, and why it is so rare, even to see at least parts of one.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And it's nice to be able to talk about our Gutenberg. The thing is that when Gutenberg printed, he only made about 180 copies. And it's amazing to think that something that would have such a big impact on the world came in such a small quantity. And of the 180, there are about 21, as you said, that are still around. And these are the ones that are complete. But there was one that made it to the United States in 1920. And a man by the name of Gabriel Wells got his hands on it and decided he didn't have enough to make a profit if he sold it all as one piece. So instead, what he did is he cut it up. And what he did is then call it noble fragments of the Gutenberg Bible, and he sold them to various people. Now, when you look at a Gutenberg Bible, one of the things that's interesting is it's such a revolution to have something that's printed, and you can make multiple copies quickly. And yet it's very, very traditional. By the time you get the 15th century, a Bible had a distinct layout to it. You had 2 columns of text, and at the top you had the title of each book in alternating red and blue letters. And then you also had initials at the beginning of chapter sections that were larger and were decorated. When Gutenberg made his Bibles, that's exactly what he did. He, with the 42-line format, he copied everything else and left space so that the initials could be painted in afterwards by hand. So on the one hand, it's a very revolutionary thing to be able to make 180 copies in a year, but it's also very, very traditional in the way it looks.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And for those who may not know, tell us really, I mean, it really had a tremendous impact. And I also understand it also played a role with both business and increasing literacy.
Exactly. Historians very often point to printing as the first truly capitalist enterprise in European history. The reason for that is it took a great deal of money, first of all, to have a printing press, have all the different type fonts, and then all the employees to set the type and then to do the actual printing. Plus, of course, you had to have stocks of paper. So it was a large-scale investment. And it's noteworthy that within 50 years of the foundation of printing, you've got about 1,000 printers scattered all over Europe. So it catches on. And the fact is that even though it sounds so small by today's printing standards, 180 copies, if you think about it, it had taken typically 2 to 4 years to handwrite a single copy of the Bible. And if you had that kind of production, it would take you well, you can do the math. I can't do the math.
I can't either.
But the thing is that it would take 90 years or more to come up with that many. So it's really quite revolutionary. And this then, in turn, by increasing the amount of books that people can read, that stimulates literacy. And of course, it's not just Bibles that are being printed, although the Vulgate Bible that Gutenberg printed spurred other copies to be made. But there's a tremendous amount of other types of literature, including original literature that gets printed in that first 50-year period. One of the most common things to be printed after the Bible is actually The Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis. So you've got all these different things out there, and increasingly it feeds into the growth of learning that you see in Western Europe during the Renaissance. And there's a great hunger for spiritual texts, especially in Northern Europe at this time. If you look at the Brethren of the Common Life in Holland, they are creating a series of schools that spread across Northern Europe. And all kinds of people will be educated in these schools. Erasmus of Rotterdam is one, Martin Luther is another. And so it spurs studies and gets everything going. But I mentioned Luther. I have to bring up the Reformation as well. One of the interesting things about printing is that you get the large number of pamphlets that are produced. And they are such small format works of literature. Think of them analogously to tweets or something today. And just as social media today is often very angry, if you have a chance to read through some of the pamphlets that come out in the early years of printing, they're very, very angry as well. And so there was a great parallel between what happened in the late 15th and early 16th century to what's going on today with our social media.
Yeah, it is also very fascinating. Again, you have leaves of the Gutenberg Bible at the Museum of the Bible, and we hope people go there and see it. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. So fascinating. Great to be with you. God bless.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a new leader. The Vatican makes an announcement about a diocese in Montana. Plus, a German conference honors the legacy of Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Francis has named a new bishop for the Diocese of Great Falls, Billings in Montana. Bishop Jeffrey Fleming will take over the diocese. The 57-year-old is a Montana native. He replaces Bishop Michael Warfel, who turns 75 in September. The diocese serves more than 30,000 Catholics. A conference in Germany this week is examining the lasting legacy of the late Pope Benedict XVI. The gathering in a small village in the mountains of Germany examines how Pope Benedict continues to inspire generations of the faithful and his legacy in theology. Keynote speakers include Cardinal Kurt Koch from the Vatican group promoting Christian unity and Father Ralph Weiman, a professor of theology. And Father Ralph Weiman, theologian and speaker at the conference, joins us now from Germany. Father Ralph, wonderful to see you. Tell us more about this conference, who organized and also who will be attending, and some of the highlights.
In Bavaria, in the place where Pope Benedict XVI was born and raised, there's currently a 5-day Congress on the theological legacy of Pope Benedict, organized by the German Catholic radio called Horeb in German. EWTN, they're transmitting it, the German section, and also there's a small private organization foundation involved called Fundatio Christiana Virtus. Among other important speakers, there is the Swiss Cardinal Kurt Koch. Pope Benedict entrusted to him the so-called Schülerkreis, the group of former students of Pope Benedict who are meant to develop and promote his theological legacy. He is one of the most distinguished experts in the theology of Pope Benedict XVI. Many highlights were already mentioned. Biographical aspects, above all theological aspects like revelation, liturgy, and so forth. What is most striking is the fact that many people got to know and love Jesus Christ through the theology of Pope Benedict, and that's what we're promoting here and explaining to the people.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, you are one of the speakers at the conference. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you said in your remarks earlier today?
Today we were explaining the sacramental foundation of our existence. I know that sounds very complicated. However, it is quite simple and it concerns our existence. Thus, there is one visible dimension our body, and one invisible dimension, the soul. The sacraments follow the same structure. There is one visible dimension, bread and wine, which is used, and one invisible dimension, the Almighty God being present under the species of bread and wine. This understanding is necessary in order to understand not only our existence, but also the sacraments. If the invisible dimension is excluded, the sacraments would become incomprehensible. Pope Benedict underlined that to rediscover this dimension is necessary for the renewal of our faith and of the Church.
Yes, and the conference is about Pope Benedict's theological legacy that continues to inspire generations of believers. What would be your message to people who may not know or may not understand his teaching and theology?
If you read the works of Pope Benedict, they will lead you to Jesus Christ. And why? Because he was a collaborator of truth. Since Jesus Christ revealed himself as the truth, the one who follows his truth, as Pope Benedict did, will always lead people also to the same truth that is Jesus Christ. So for that reason, if you read Pope Benedict, sometimes it might be a little bit difficult, especially talking about some specific theological aspects, but generally speaking, he's very comprehensible. That will always lead you to Jesus Christ, to encounter him, to love him, and to be guided by his light.
Father Ralph, we're almost out of time, but I'm curious, can you tell us how Pope Benedict is still regarded in his home country of Germany?
Oh yeah, the simple people, the ones who really believe in God, they love Pope Benedict, and they have a great gratitude. In these days, we got a lot of feedback, and so many people were contacting us and saying thank you for what you're doing and what Pope Benedict did. He will remain as a humble servant, but at the same time as a light. The situation in the Church of Germany is very difficult, but Pope Benedict's theology is a light that will continue to shine.
Father Ralph, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it, and God bless you.
God bless you too.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.